I never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. My name's Emma, and up until about 6 months ago, I thought my best friend, Sarah, was the one person who would never let me down. We'd been friends for over 10 years, practically sisters. I mean, we did everything together, from middle school sleepovers, where we'd giggle about boys, to high school pep rallies, to every post-graduation night out. You name it. We were thick as thieves. But something shifted around the time I started dating Mike. You know the story, high school sweetheart turned the guy I married. Mike and I had been together for 3 years when we got engaged. It was the perfect moment, or so I thought. I remember telling Sarah about Mike for the first time. She was so excited for me, always the one cheering me on. At least, that's how I remember it. The truth? Looking back, there were little signs, small things that I dismissed at the time as nothing. But I should have paid more attention. We'd always been super close. So when Mike popped the question at our favorite restaurant, Sarah was the first person I called to share the news. She was ecstatic, at first. But there was something off in her voice, like a quiet undercurrent of resentment. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe the stress of work, but the cracks in our friendship started showing in the weeks that followed. It wasn't obvious at first. Sarah congratulated me, sure, but then I noticed she started pulling away a bit. I tried not to let it bother me. Weddings are stressful, and I was busy planning. But there were times when I'd call her to chat, and she wouldn't pick up. When she did, she was distant or distracted, and sometimes I'd get a half-hearted response like, "I'm just tired," or "I've got a lot going on." It was weird, but I figured it was just wedding stress. I mean, we all know what a headache that can be. Then came the night I realized it wasn't just about me getting married. It was about her. It happened the week of the engagement party. It was a Friday night, and we were supposed to meet up for drinks. It was supposed to be a casual thing to celebrate with some friends. But when I got to the bar, Sarah was already there, sitting with a group of people I didn't recognize. As I approached the table, I noticed her stiffen, like she wasn't exactly thrilled to see me. "Hey," I smiled, trying to shake off the weird vibe. "I didn't realize you brought so many people." Sarah's smile was forced. "Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to mix things up," she said. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept darting around the room. We didn't even hug, which was unusual. We were always huggers. I tried to shake it off, but the night didn't get better. As we talked, I noticed Sarah becoming more and more distant. At one point, she turned her attention to the new guy at the table, who I later found out was her coworker. They were laughing about something, but when I looked closely, her eyes flicked over to me in this almost judgmental way. The kind of look you get when someone's watching you, waiting for you to fail. Then, the conversation shifted. We were talking about wedding plans, and I mentioned how I was deciding between a beach wedding or a more formal venue. Sarah, who was always so supportive of my decisions, suddenly interrupted. "Honestly, I don't get why you'd want to make such a big deal out of it. It's just a wedding." Her voice was cold, almost condescending. "You don't need to spend all that money. People are going to forget about it anyway." I was stunned. My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" "It's not just about the money, it's about celebrating with the people we love." I said it lightly, trying to mask the hurt in my voice. She shrugged. "Sure, but you could just elope, right? Wouldn't that be way less of a hassle?" The table went quiet for a moment, and I could feel the awkwardness creep in. I tried to laugh it off, but something inside me was twisting. This wasn't my best friend anymore. This was someone else. Someone who was acting like everything I was doing was wrong. It stung, but I didn't say anything. That night, when I got home, I cried. I thought about everything. How Sarah had been acting recently. How she used to be so supportive of my dreams and now seemed to take joy in tearing them down. But I told myself it was probably just a phase. We all have them, right? The next few weeks went by with Sarah's distance growing. I started to realize that the cracks in our friendship weren't just about me getting engaged. It was something deeper. It wasn't until I caught a glimpse of her Facebook status a few days before the engagement party that I truly understood how deep the jealousy ran. It was a post with a photo of Sarah and another friend, captioned, "Some people just can't handle when things change." The subtle jab at me couldn't have been clearer. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at my screen, my heart sinking. It was like all the pieces clicked into place, her behavior, the distance, the comments she'd made. I was getting married, and it felt like she wasn't happy for me at all. The day of the engagement party arrived. Mike and I were excited. We had a lot of friends coming, including Sarah, of course. But as the evening wore on, and everyone gathered, Sarah was nowhere to be found. My phone buzzed with texts from other people, asking where she was. I tried calling her, but there was no answer. My stomach twisted with a mix of frustration and confusion. It wasn't until about an hour into the party that I received a text from Sarah. It was short. "Oh, I forgot. I was busy watching TV." It stung, but I didn't let it show. Not yet. I put my phone down and took a deep breath. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stepped away from the group, retreating to a quiet corner of the venue. My phone was still in my hand, that awful text message from Sarah staring back at me. I was busy watching TV. It felt so dismissive, so careless. I hit her number and waited for the ringing. My heart thudded in my chest, but I wasn't backing down anymore. I needed answers. She picked up after a few seconds, and I could hear the sound of static in the background, probably her TV, the one she'd rather be watching than celebrating my engagement. "Hey," she said, her voice casual, like nothing was wrong. "What's up?" I could feel my grip tightening on the phone. I swallowed down the lump in my throat before speaking. "Really, Sarah? Really? I've been trying to reach you all night. You were supposed to be here, and now I find out you're sitting on your couch watching TV." My voice shook with a mix of anger and hurt, but I didn't care. It needed to be said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, just enough for me to feel that familiar, sinking feeling in my stomach. Then she spoke, but not in the way I expected. "You know, Emma," she started, her voice suddenly dripping with sarcasm, "you always were a little overdramatic. It's just a party. You're acting like it's the end of the world." She sounded like she was mocking me, almost like she was enjoying this. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, the words echoing in my head. "You're acting like it's the end of the world." Was she serious? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like she'd completely dismissed everything that mattered to me. I don't know what happened to you, Sarah. You've been acting like this for weeks now. I don't even recognize you anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but the hurt was creeping in. "I thought we were supposed to be best friends. What happened to that?" She scoffed. "You really want to know? Fine. Here's the truth, Emma. You've changed. Ever since you started dating Mike, it's like you've forgotten about everyone else. And now you're getting engaged, acting all perfect and shiny, and frankly, it's annoying." Her words hit like a slap across my face. Annoying? She was mad at me for being happy? I wanted to shout. I wanted to tell her how hurt I was, how much she'd let me down, but I stayed silent for a moment, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. "I'm sorry I'm so perfect and shiny," I said, the bitterness in my voice impossible to ignore. I didn't realize being happy was a crime. There was a pause. And then, like she couldn't help herself, Sarah laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was a cold, spiteful laugh. "Oh, Emma, you just don't get it, do you?" Her tone was almost mockingly sweet now. "It's not about you being happy. It's about how you've made everything about you. You've always done that, but now you're making it unbearable." My blood boiled. Everything about me? Had she really just said that? The Sarah I used to know would have never talked to me like this. "You know what, Sarah? Maybe you're right," I said, my voice laced with anger. "Maybe I've been so wrapped up in planning my future with Mike that I forgot about you. But honestly, I've been so busy dealing with your attitude lately that I almost forgot what it feels like to have a friend who actually cares." There was a long silence. And then she snapped back with something that cut deeper than anything she'd said before. "You know what, Emma? Maybe you should just stop pretending you're so innocent in all this. You're so caught up in your fairy tale that you can't even see how selfish you've become. But, hey, whatever. Go ahead and keep planning your perfect wedding. I'll be over here, living my life, without all this drama." Before I could respond, she hung up. I stood there, completely stunned. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't even bother looking. My hands were shaking, my thoughts were racing, and I was no longer sure who Sarah was anymore. The friend I'd known for over a decade felt like a stranger now, someone who could casually tear me down without a second thought. I thought about how I used to drop everything for Sarah, how I used to be her biggest cheerleader. And now it felt like she was doing everything she could to tear me down. I took a deep breath, my heart still racing after the conversation with Sarah. I knew I couldn't let her ruin my night. This was my engagement party, and no matter what she said or did, I wasn't going to let her take away the happiness I felt. I decided to enjoy the rest of the evening. The music was great, the food was amazing, and everyone who mattered was here celebrating with me. Mike was by my side, looking handsome in his suit, grinning from ear to ear like he'd just won the lottery. And honestly, in a way, he had. We took pictures with our friends, laughed at inside jokes, and posed with family members. Every time I looked around, I saw how genuinely happy everyone was for us. It felt like the most perfect night. I wasn't going to let Sarah's toxicity ruin it. I couldn't resist snapping a few pictures of Mike and me together, our arms around each other, beaming. I captioned one of them, "The one who really matters." It felt like the perfect little jab after what had just happened. I didn't tag Sarah, but I knew she'd see it. She was always checking my posts. A couple of hours passed, and I was dancing with my friends when I heard my phone buzz. I glanced at it and saw a notification. It was Sarah. I braced myself. She'd commented on the photo. "Must be nice to have such a perfect life, huh? Too bad it's all a show." I rolled my eyes. The way she always tried to spin everything I did into something negative had become so predictable. I showed the comment to Mike, and we both laughed it off. He rubbed my shoulder affectionately, and we went back to enjoying the night. But then, things took a turn. A few minutes later, I noticed Sarah walking through the door, looking way too casual for a party she wasn't invited to. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie, her hair thrown up in a messy bun. Her eyes immediately scanned the room, and I could feel the tension building. She was clearly here to stir things up. I tried to ignore her, but then I noticed her heading straight for the center of the room where the small group of friends and family were gathered. She was acting all chill, but her movements were too calculated, and I could see the subtle smirk on her face. She was trying to make a statement. Sarah tried to approach me, but I stayed with Mike, who was holding my hand. She glanced around at the crowd, then turned her attention to me, her voice louder than necessary. Well, Emma, looks like your little fairy tale's going great, huh?" she said, a clear hint of bitterness in her tone. She scanned the room as if she were looking for something to criticize. "I mean, I've never been a fan of the whole look at me vibe, but hey, it's your big day, right?" I felt my stomach churn. The whole vibe was off, and I could tell she was trying to sabotage the party. People were starting to notice, and the whispers had already begun. "Isn't it a little awkward?" Sarah continued, not missing a beat, "that all of your friends here are just showing up for a show? Like, you're all pretending to be so happy, but we all know what's really going on behind the scenes." Mike stepped in, his protective side coming out as he gently but firmly placed his hand on my shoulder. "Sarah, I think it's time for you to leave." And that's when it happened. As Sarah tried to make her dramatic exit with a smug smile on her face, she turned too quickly toward the door and tripped over the edge of the rug, sprawling forward and crashing into the floor with a loud thud. The entire room went silent for a split second before the snickers started. Then came the laughter. People couldn't help it. Sarah, the girl who had been trying so hard to stir the pot, was now the subject of every eye in the room. She tried to stand up, her face red with embarrassment, but she slipped again, stumbling to her feet. "Oh my God," she muttered under her breath, her eyes darting around the room. I could feel the tension lifting from my shoulders as people started laughing. But it wasn't the good kind of laughter. It was the kind that said, "You got what you deserved." It was a sweet moment, but I didn't let myself gloat. It felt almost too good to be true, seeing her go from the one trying to make me look bad to the one everyone was laughing at. Sarah's face turned bright crimson. She glared at me, her eyes practically burning with rage, but she said nothing. She just turned and stormed out of the room, the door slamming behind her with a sharp crack. I stood there, still in shock, trying to process what had just happened. But as I looked around at the people who stayed and who were still smiling and laughing with me, I realized this was the moment. Sarah had finally shown her true colors. The night went on, and I made sure to enjoy every single second of it. No more drama. Just me, Mike, and the people who genuinely cared about us. Later that night, I received a few angry texts from Sarah, but they didn't faze me anymore. I'd already made my decision. The morning after the party, I woke up with a heavy head, still trying to process everything that had happened. Sarah's fall was still fresh in my mind, and honestly, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding in, and her little stunt at the party had finally broken the tension. But just as I was about to relax, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. It was Sarah. I hesitated. My mind raced through the options. Should I just block her? Or maybe ignore the call and save myself the stress? I debated, but curiosity got the best of me. I answered the phone. "Hello." A long pause. Then, Sarah's voice came through, low and tight with anger. "You think you won, don't you?" I groaned inwardly, already feeling my blood pressure rise. "What do you want, Sarah?" You really think Mike's all yours now, huh? She asked, almost coldly. You think he's your perfect fiancé? Your Prince Charming? I wasn't sure where she was going with this, but I could feel the tension in her words. My gut was already telling me this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. I sat up in bed, pulling the covers tighter around me. I don't know what you're talking about. You're the one who showed up to my engagement party uninvited, causing drama for no reason. If you've got something to say, just say it. She laughed, a bitter, dry sound. Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're too blind to see it. I clenched my jaw. See what, Sarah? There was a long pause, so long that I almost thought she'd hung up. But then she spoke again, her voice quiet, like she was choosing her words carefully. I've been in love with Mike for years, Emma. Years. And I let you have him. I let you think that you two were perfect, that you had this dream life. But all the while, it was me who really deserved him. I'm the one who understands him. I'm the one who actually knows him. I'm the one who knows what he really wants. My stomach sank. This wasn't happening. What? Are you serious right now, Sarah? You're saying that you've been in love with Mike all this time, and you're just now telling me? This whole time, you've been acting like my best friend, but all you wanted was him. Sarah's voice became more heated. I never wanted to hurt you, Emma, but you took him from me. And now that you're getting engaged, you think you're the one he really wants? No, I'm the one who deserves him. I've always been there for him. I've always been his real friend. You don't know him like I do. I couldn't breathe. The words felt like punches. You're insane, I finally managed to say. You seriously think you deserve Mike more than me? You think he'd want someone like you, after all the crap you've pulled? After you've been so jealous and manipulative? This is about you and your own insecurities, Sarah, not about Mike or me. I'm not insecure, she snapped. I'm just tired of watching you pretend to be the perfect couple when we both know the truth. I should be the one wearing that ring, not you. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, rising to the surface like a volcano ready to erupt. You need to stop right now. Mike isn't a prize for you to claim. He's not some object you can win by playing games. He chose me, Sarah. I am the one he loves, and I don't care if you think you deserve him. You don't get to act like this. You don't get to manipulate people and think you'll get away with it. You've made this all about you for so long, and I'm done. Done with you. There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she'd hang up. I was almost relieved. But then she spoke again, her voice dangerously quiet. You're making a huge mistake, Emma. You'll regret pushing me away. No one else is going to put up with you and your perfect little life. Mike's going to see the truth eventually. He always does. And when he does, I'll be there. My heart raced, not out of fear, but out of pure disgust. I could feel the tears of frustration welling up behind my eyes. No, Sarah. You're the one who's going to regret this. Don't ever speak to me again. Don't call. Don't text. Don't even think about showing up to any more of my events. We're done. And I mean it. There was a long, drawn-out pause on the other end of the line. I could practically feel her seething with rage. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of her petty jealousy or her manipulative games. I was done. Fine, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. But don't say I didn't warn you. You'll see. You'll all see. And with that, the line went dead. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. I had just cut ties with Sarah, the person I had once considered my closest friend, the person I had trusted with my deepest secrets. But I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't allow her to keep manipulating me or Mike. The toxic jealousy was too much. I stared at my phone for a moment, then locked it and tossed it onto the bed. Days had passed since I'd cut ties with Sarah. At first, I was consumed by anger, frustration, and disbelief. But over time, the storm settled, and I found myself oddly calm. Life went on. Mike and I continued with our wedding plans, and I tried to move forward without letting Sarah's drama ruin the happiest time of my life. I'd forgotten about the whole thing for a while. I went to work, spent time with Mike, and even hung out with some of my other friends. It was like a weight had been lifted, and I started feeling normal again. But every now and then, I would think about Sarah, about how she'd betrayed me, and about how it had felt like she was trying to steal everything from me, not just Mike, but my peace, my joy, and my trust. I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little every time. And then, yesterday, something unexpected happened. I was scrolling through Facebook, just checking in on the usual stuff, when I saw a post from Sarah. A photo of her, sitting at a bar, smiling and looking so casual. And in the caption, learning to let go, on to bigger and better things. I stared at the screen for a long time. It was so passive-aggressive. And yet, something about it felt like closure. Like she was finally done with the drama, or at least pretending to be. I wanted to laugh, to comment something snarky. But honestly, I didn't care enough anymore. I couldn't be bothered. But then it hit me, she had moved on. And I had too. Maybe I didn't need to worry about her anymore. Maybe it was all part of growing up and leaving behind toxic people. So here we are. The engagement party was a distant memory, and Sarah's drama was nothing but a chapter I'd closed in my life. So then, did I handle it the right way? Let me know what you think in the comments. My name is Oliver. I'm 28, and for most of my life, I've been the invisible one in my family. You know, the one people forget to text, the one left out of group photos, the one they remember when they need a ride or a favor, but never when it actually matters. I grew up with a mom who always had a sharp tongue and a selective memory. Somehow, she remembered every mistake I made, but forgot every award, every time I helped her, every birthday card I saved up for. I have a sister, Ava, who learned early on that playing perfect got her everything. She smiled, curtsied, got good grades, and got treated like royalty. I was the opposite, quiet, skeptical, too blunt for my own good. That didn't sit well with our family culture, where smiles were currency and truth was a nuisance. For years, I tried to earn my place. I brought pies to dinners I wasn't invited to, gifts to birthdays where no one noticed me arriving, and compliments to relatives who never said my name correctly. I played along at first, thinking if I just tried hard enough, they'd eventually see me. But by the time I hit 25, the veil had lifted. I realized my efforts didn't change a thing. My place at the table was never going to be permanent. Still, there's a certain kind of ache that doesn't fully go away, no matter how logically you understand it. So when Thanksgiving rolled around last year, I debated whether to go. My cousin Maya was the only person in that entire web of relatives who genuinely treated me like a human being. She was younger by 2 years, but more emotionally mature than half the adults in the room. We'd grown closer over the years, DMs, occasional late-night calls, honest check-ins. So when she texted me the day before Thanksgiving saying, "You better show up. You know I saved you a spot," I caved. I figured maybe, if only for her, it was worth showing up again. I drove the 40 minutes out to my uncle's house, where Thanksgiving was always hosted. Classic suburbia, manicured lawn, tacky inflatable turkey in the front yard, and that unmistakable scent of butter, spices, and tension wafting out the open windows. I parked in my usual spot, 3 houses down, because my uncle's driveway was always full when I came late. As I walked up the front steps with a bottle of wine I knew no one would touch, I saw them through the screen door. My mom, my aunt, my sister, my uncle. Laughing, talking, smiling like it was a photo shoot for Dysfunctional Families Anonymous. I didn't expect a parade or even a hello. But what happened next wasn't just cold, it was deliberate. As I reached for the doorknob, the door opened, just a crack, and there was my Uncle Ron, filling the frame like a human roadblock. He didn't greet me, didn't smile. He just looked at me with that smug little twitch in his mouth and said, "You're not family anymore, Oliver. You need to leave." At first, I thought he was joking. I actually laughed, expecting the punchline. But he didn't move. Behind him, I saw my mom pass 2 plates across the table, one of them with the name card I recognized. Mine. She handed it, laughing, to Ava's boyfriend, a guy I'd only met twice. They clinked glasses. My chair, my seat, was filled before I even got a foot in the door. "I'm serious," Uncle Ron added. "You showing up just causes tension." I blinked. "Causes tension?" I repeated. "I haven't even walked in yet." He gave a mock sympathetic shrug. "Let's not make this worse than it needs to be. Just head home, okay?" I looked over his shoulder, locking eyes with my mom. She didn't flinch, didn't call him off. She just raised an eyebrow and took a sip of her wine like she was watching a mildly interesting TV show. For a moment, I thought about fighting back, raising my voice, making a scene, but I didn't. Instead, I did something that caught even me off guard. I nodded. Calmly, quietly. I stepped back. I walked down those steps with the same bottle of wine still in my hand, got in my car, and drove 2 blocks before pulling over. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with something colder, something more final, because I'd seen all I needed to see. I wasn't family to them. I was a placeholder, a joke, a scapegoat when they needed someone to criticize, and an empty chair when they needed a space filler. But here's the thing. I had something they didn't know about. Months ago, I'd been slowly preparing for the moment I stopped trying. Something Maya and I had talked about more than once, over whispered calls and shared stories of being left out, overlooked, dismissed. She wasn't as loud about it, but she saw it too. The hypocrisy, the favoritism, the manipulation that danced beneath every family gathering. She once told me, if we ever wanted to break the illusion, all it would take is one spark. So I picked up my phone, opened the saved message. It had taken me weeks to write, to time it just right. It wasn't a rant or a guilt trip or some long-winded attempt at closure. It was just the truth, laid bare, sent to a very select group of people in that house. And I hit send. 5 minutes later, as I sat parked at the corner of their street, engine idling, I watched through the rearview mirror. The front door opened. First it was Maya, storming out, face red with anger. Then my cousin Daniel. Then his girlfriend. Then my aunt's best friend, the one who always brought dessert and had a soft spot for me. One by one, they left. I couldn't hear the words being shouted inside, but I could guess. The illusion was cracking. And that was just the beginning. Maya was the first to call. I saw her name flash across my screen before I even pulled out of my spot. I picked up, heart pounding, not because I was nervous, but because I hadn't expected it to unravel this fast. Oliver, she snapped, not even waiting for me to speak. What did you just do? I paused. You read it? Of course I read it. So did everyone else. Uncle Ron's face turned purple. Your mom tried to play dumb, and Ava just stood there frozen like she didn't know what planet she was on. I could hear the wind rushing past her phone. She was walking fast. Maybe pacing. Maybe on her way to her car. Maya was quiet for a second, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped. Why didn't you tell me you were recording them? That was the thing. A few months back, after years of being talked down to, dismissed, and lied about behind my back, I'd started collecting receipts. Not out of paranoia, but because I was tired of gaslighting. I'd record casual conversations, save texts, take screenshots. I had video clips of my mom telling Ava she should just take the credit for something I'd done. A voice memo of Uncle Ron saying I only showed up to family events for handouts, even though I never once asked for anything. And maybe the worst of them all, an audio recording from my birthday the year before, when they forgot I existed, even though I had been sitting right there at the table. That Thanksgiving message I sent, it wasn't just a note. It was a compilation. I had stitched together the greatest hits of family hypocrisy into a 5-minute clip. It had context, timestamps, and just enough raw silence between the insults to let it all sink in. I sent it to 7 people: Maya, Daniel, my Aunt Laura, my cousin's fiancé, my mom's sister, who had always been on the fence, and 2 family friends who'd always believed the curated version of the family that my mother and Uncle Ron sold like gospel. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you caught in the middle, I said quietly. Maya scoffed. I'm already in the middle. But I'm glad you did it. I exhaled, my grip on the steering wheel finally loosening. Are you okay? I will be. I'm done with them. Click. I sat there in the silence of my car, staring out the windshield, watching as more cars began pulling away from the house. A few people stood on the porch, looking confused. My mom's voice rose above them all. She was shouting something I couldn't make out, but I didn't need to hear the words. I'd heard versions of them my entire life. The next call came from Aunt Laura. Oliver, she said, breathless. Where are you? I debated lying. Down the street. Stay there. I'm coming. She hung up, and true to her word, 5 minutes later she climbed into my passenger seat. Her eyes were wide, but not with anger. More like someone who had just stumbled into a crime scene she wasn't expecting to find. I listened to everything, she said. Twice. I said nothing. I never knew it was that bad. I mean, I knew they were. Cruel sometimes. I just didn't realize how calculated it all was. I looked over at her. You really didn't know? She winced. I saw pieces. But your mom always made it seem like you were the problem. She said you were dramatic, that you twisted things. I didn't want to believe she'd lie. She didn't lie, I said softly. She edited. Aunt Laura stared at the dashboard. This is going to rip the family apart. Then maybe it was already broken, I said. That evening, I went home to a flood of messages. Some angry, some apologetic, a few confused. But what stood out the most was the silence from the people who should have said something: my mom, Ava, and Uncle Ron. Not one of them reached out. Not even a call. Not a single word. Until the next morning. That's when I saw the post. My mother, in her usual performative style, had posted a long status on Facebook about betrayal, misunderstanding, and private matters being aired for attention. She never said my name, but the comments made it clear who she was talking about. People offered sympathy, called me disrespectful, said things like, "You raised him better than that, girl." But something unexpected happened in the thread. Maya commented, "So did Daniel." Then Aunt Laura. One by one, people began pushing back. They called out the manipulation, the double standards, even sharing their own stories of being mistreated or lied to. The thread exploded. Some relatives deleted their comments. A few blocked me outright. But the tide had shifted. For once, I wasn't alone. For once, people saw it too. That weekend, I got a message request from Ava's boyfriend. It said, "I didn't know they were like that. I'm sorry. If I'd known what I was taking part in, I would have never sat in your chair." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The message had already been sent, and not just the one in the group chat. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. I felt like the author. And that story, it wasn't finished yet. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, I got a knock at my door. I live in a quiet part of town. Nothing fancy, just a modest apartment above a bakery that smells like cinnamon rolls every morning. It's peaceful, quiet. Nothing like the house I grew up in, where every door slam felt like a gunshot and every holiday dinner was a performance for the neighbors. I wasn't expecting visitors. Most of my friends had already texted me after the video went around, some supportive, some shocked. Maya had been calling me daily, but I wasn't prepared to open the door and see my dad. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. He looked older than I remembered, gray creeping further into his beard, that familiar leather jacket a little more worn. He didn't smile, just stood there, hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels like he didn't know what to say. "Hi," he finally muttered. "Didn't expect to see you," I said, stepping aside but not exactly welcoming him in. He hesitated, then walked in anyway. I watched him scan the apartment, clean, quiet, filled with small things that made me happy. The records on the shelf, the stack of books I actually had time to read now, the framed photo of Maya and me from the one Thanksgiving we snuck out and got burgers instead of dealing with the family circus. "I saw the video," he said, "or clips of it. Your aunt sent it to me." I waited. He sat down on the edge of my couch, looking at the floor like it held the answers he didn't know how to ask for. "Your mom, she's been losing her mind over this. Says you set her up. Says you twisted everything." I leaned against the counter. "Did I?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he rubbed the bridge of his nose like he was trying to press the tension out through his skin. "I don't know, Oliver. I mean, I knew things were bad between you two. But hearing it like that, it was hard to listen to." I folded my arms. "Hard for who?" He looked up. "For me. Because it made me realize I let it happen. For years." And there it was. The first real sentence my father had ever said that felt like a mirror instead of a dismissal. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. He shifted on the couch. "You remember when you were 13 and your mom threw out your art portfolio?" I nodded slowly. That day had stayed with me. Months of work tossed into the trash because I'd gotten a B in science. "Yeah. She told me you'd drawn something disrespectful." I drew a cartoon of her yelling at me. That was it. He let out a dry laugh. I believed her. Never even asked to see it. "That was the pattern," I said, and I was surprised at how steady my voice was. She'd say something. You'd nod. Ava would play along, and I'd be left trying to figure out if I was crazy or just not worth the truth. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he sat there, nodding slightly, letting the silence stretch. "I can't fix what happened," he said eventually. "But I wanted you to know. I see it now. I wish I'd said something sooner. I wish I'd stepped in." I believed he meant it. I really did. But part of me also knew that his regret didn't undo years of complicity. He hadn't been cruel, but he'd been silent. And sometimes, silence is just a different kind of wound. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "But I don't know what you want from me." He exhaled. "I don't know either. I guess I wanted to see how you're doing." "I'm doing better," I said truthfully. "Now that I'm out of it. Now that I've stopped pretending they'll change." He nodded again. "They're planning damage control." "Of course they are. They think if they just wait it out, people will move on." I raised an eyebrow. "And will they?" He looked tired. "Some already have. Some are scared to pick sides. But a few? They're furious. Especially with what you said about the money." Oh, that part. See, what I hadn't mentioned to anyone outside that original message was the money trail. I had been giving quiet financial support to several family members for years. Rent, car repairs, even a small loan to Ava once when she said her boyfriend was abusive and she needed to leave. I never asked for it back. Never told anyone. I did it because I thought maybe, just maybe, it would earn me a place in the family again. That stopped 3 months ago. I didn't make a scene about it. I just started redirecting my help toward Maya, toward friends, toward people who actually treated me like a person. The video I sent out included a note at the end. This is why I stopped paying for your lives. Apparently, that stung more than the audio clips. They're saying you're punishing them, my dad said. They punish themselves, I replied. I just stopped rewarding it. He didn't argue. After a while, he stood. I should go? I just wanted you to know you were right. About all of it. He started toward the door, then paused. If there's ever a way back, for us, I mean, I hope you'll let me take it. And then he left. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood there, in the quiet, wondering how long it would take for the next wave to hit. Because I knew the family wasn't done yet. My mom didn't let go of power that easily. Ava never handled humiliation well. And Thanksgiving might have been the spark, but Christmas was around the corner. And if they thought they could pretend nothing had changed, they were about to be reminded. I hadn't even started yet. By the time December rolled around, the silence was deafening. The group chat for family Christmas plans that usually lit up with potluck assignments and recycled memes from our Aunt Margie was unusually quiet. The last message in there was Maya's. Let me know when you all are ready to take some accountability. No one responded. No haha reactions. No snide remarks. Just a vacuum of guilt pretending to be peace. I wasn't invited, of course. Not that I needed the invite. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I didn't need to force a smile through another dinner where Ava's career was celebrated like a Nobel Prize and mine was ignored. I didn't need to listen to my mom laugh at jokes about me or hear Uncle Ron say things like, Oliver's always been sensitive, like I was some malfunctioning appliance. I was free now. Free from obligation, from expectation, from the heavy weight of being the family's emotional punching bag. But I wasn't done. Not yet. See, the recording I sent out at Thanksgiving was just the beginning. It had shaken their image, forced conversations they didn't want to have, but it hadn't truly forced them to change. They were hiding now, licking their wounds, waiting for the drama to pass. I could feel it, that smug, simmering belief that eventually I'd fade from memory and they'd reclaim the narrative. So I made sure they couldn't. I started with the money. Quietly, methodically, and without warning, I called in the favors. That $3,000 loan to Ava? I sent her a formal letter through my lawyer, reminding her that while I had originally treated it as a gift, the recent revelation of her lies about escaping an abusive relationship voided that understanding. She was still with the guy. By the way, he showed up to Thanksgiving in my seat, laughing with my mom. I gave her 60 days to repay. No threats, no interest, just a paper trail. I canceled the recurring bank transfer that had been covering part of Uncle Ron's property tax. He never asked for help directly. He was too proud for that. But a few years ago, he hinted at tough times, and I stepped in. Every November, like clockwork, I'd send the amount due. Not this year. On December 3rd, his bank declined the payment request. My mom, though, she was the biggest one. For 5 years, I'd been covering the lease on her car. She never thanked me. Not once. It was expected. She made it clear that, as her son, it was my duty. I let it slide for too long. She didn't know the car was still in my name. On December 10th, I repossessed it. The phone calls came in like fireworks. First Ava, shrill and furious. Then Uncle Ron, trying to reason with me like I was some angry child. And finally, my mother. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just called and said, "So this is who you really are?" And I replied, "No, this is who you made me become." Click. Christmas Eve came. I didn't sit alone. I spent it with Maya and a few of our mutual friends. We made dinner together in her apartment, lit candles, played board games, and exchanged gifts that didn't need to impress anyone. It was the warmest holiday I'd had in years. Around midnight, Maya poured us each a glass of wine and sat beside me on the floor, pulling a blanket over our legs. "They called me," she said softly. "Let me guess," I said. "Damage control?" She nodded. "Your mom said I was choosing sides." that I was tearing the family apart. You are, I said. The part that needed to be torn down. She leaned her head on my shoulder. She also said something else. That she was going to set the record straight. I sighed. Of course she is. The next morning, I found out what she meant. My mom wrote a long post on Facebook. Another performance, another attempt to flip the script. She talked about how families go through hard times, how sometimes private pain becomes public, and how some members are easily manipulated by false narratives. It was a masterclass in polished denial. No names, no specifics. Just enough ambiguity to draw sympathy from people who only knew the version of her she'd curated for years. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Because by then, the truth was already spreading on its own. Aunt Laura posted her own status. Short, but pointed. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken family is to stop pretending it's not broken. Proud of you, Oliver. Daniel posted a screenshot of one of the texts my mom had sent him years ago, bad-mouthing me right after I helped him pay for college books. The caption was simple. We all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it. More and more people, cousins, old family friends, even one of Ava's college roommates, began commenting, messaging, reaching out. People I hadn't spoken to in years were apologizing, telling me they'd noticed things but didn't know how deep it went. It was like lifting the lid off a pressure cooker. Everyone had stories. Everyone had scars. And now, they weren't afraid to share them. A week after Christmas, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From my mom. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. She said I was destroying the family's reputation, that I was making enemies I couldn't afford, that there were consequences to embarrassing people in public. It read like the final act of someone who had lost control and didn't know how else to claw it back. I folded the letter once and dropped it in the trash. I didn't need to fight her anymore. The truth was winning on its own. By the time New Year's Eve rolled around, the family had split into two camps. There were the ones who clung to the old ways, defending my mom, pretending the recordings were taken out of context, dismissing every call out as drama. And then there were the ones who finally opened their eyes. They started organizing their own gatherings. Maya hosted a brunch in January and invited everyone she trusted. Over 20 people showed up. Uncle Ron wasn't one of them. Neither was Ava. Neither was my mother. I've had to grieve, in a way, not just the loss of a family I never truly had, but the version of me that kept waiting for their love to come wrapped in approval. I let that version die, buried him with the guilt, the people-pleasing, the endless ache for validation. Now I'm living. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since high school. I launched a small freelance business. Maya and I are closer than ever. And every so often, someone reaches out. Someone who saw what happened, who recognized their own family in my story, who says, "Thank you for saying something." I've felt this way for years. So if you're reading this and thinking about the family members who mock you, who use your love like a leash, who only call when they need something, listen to me. You don't have to stay in that house just because your name is on the mailbox. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep the peace they never gave you. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand at the front door they slammed in your face, turn around, and never look back. I didn't lose a family. I shed one. And in the quiet that followed, I finally heard my own voice again. Clear, unapologetic, free.